What's happening, roadies? This is Richard Bennett.
This is Andrew Ratcliffe.
What's happening, roadies? This is Ace Piva, and you are listening to Roadie Free Radio.
What's up, roadies? My name is Larry Milburn, and this is Roadie Free Radio, your VIP pass to meet and greet the stars behind the scenes of the music and film business. All right, what's happening, roadies? Welcome and happy holidays. This is episode 114 of Roadie Free Radio, right here, coming at you from a barn in Northwest Connecticut. This is your host, Larry Milburn. Happy holidays. How are you? What is going on? Woo! This week's guest is Mr. Ace Piva, tour manager, road manager, sound engineer, great guy, and founder of overthebridge.org. We are going to get into that. We are going to dive into that shortly. I'm a little worse for wear this morning or today, whenever I'm recording this thing in my freezing barn, sipping my tea. Have I told you guys I've decided to give up coffee? And my printer's making some noise. Giving up coffee this week for the rest of the year and into next year. I don't know how long. Giving up coffee and all caffeine. Giving up trying to lose some weight. Let's do that. Okay. Let's try to shed some pounds. That's got to happen. And laying off the green stuff. All right. I think you know what I'm talking about. Not the cash. I'm not talking about green hard cash. I'm talking about that other green stuff that's making waves these days. Just cleaning it up for a bit. 2019 is going to be a big one, and I want to be ready for it. And I figured, you know what? Why get ready for January and January when you can get ready for January and December, get a jump on it? So that's what I'm doing. And so I'm sipping some tea here, trying to keep warm in the barn. It's really cold and wet when I'm recording this, but what are you going to do? Anyway, happy holidays, my friends. So yeah, last night I was at the warehouse at the Fairfield Theater Company filming for the all-girl Led Zeppelin band called Les Zeppelin. I think I've talked about them before. Down there hanging out with Night Bob and his friend Desmond, who I got to meet. Very cool dude. Another old school roadie who got out of it just in time, save his life. But Bob mixed a hell of a show. It was very cool. Sam, if you're listening, monitor engineer down there at the warehouse, thank you, buddy, for letting me be all up in your business. You know, guys, it's really cool. I'm starting to get to shoot more and more bands and do these little tour promos, like the one I put together for the Magpie Salute. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. It's called Magpie Salute on Tour 2018. And it's cool, man. I get to go and shoot these little things, spend the night, cut together a 60-second little teaser trailer for bands to use, and hope to do more of that stuff. So, yeah, great night of rock and roll. It's so cool to hear Led Zeppelin tunes done very well, done live, stuff that you'd normally just hear on a record. There it is, right in your face. And these ladies know how to bring it. If you have not caught a Led Zeppelin show, get on out. They're going to be touring a lot come January and February and March. So check them out. Head over to their website. Not going to want to miss it. Also wanted to give a shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for all of your feedback, your support, your listens for last week's episode, the Peeking Behind the Curtain special, A Life on the Road with Night Bob and Rich Neeson from Lagan Music in Elmsford, New York. We had a great time, and the episode's doing really well, and I'm very happy about that. And I'm going to take some ownership on something. I know it has been brought to my attention a few different ways that the audio was not great. It was a little tough. We had some great sound engineers in the room, but no one actually was up in the booth. We were a little short-handed on that account, so no one could get up in the booth there to do the sound for us while we were doing the show. So things, the levels aren't quite where they're supposed to be and whatnot, but I think it's the content, all right? Focus on the content, and as we move forward with these, we're going to make sure that is dialed in. But anyway, wanted to say that. It was a great night. We will be doing it again, so stay tuned for that. Also want to give a shout out to Nathan Lively of Sound Design Live and Adam Zendel for your support and patronage over on my Patreon account. As you guys may or may not know, I do have a Patreon account where if you want to support Roadie Free Radio on a weekly, monthly basis, you can do so. We have some goals that we're trying to achieve. We have some different tiers that you can choose from. You can start with like $5 a month. You get, a couple of stickers or whatever it is. You go over there, check it out. Head over to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Roadie Free Radio. And if you want to hop in there and throw some shekels at me to keep the show going and keep it moving, I would appreciate that. But shout out to Nathan Lively and Adam Zendel for supporting. I really appreciate it. And being monthly subscribers of the show, monthly supporters of the show. And listen, if you guys, it's Christmas season. If you are in need of the perfect Christmas gifts, I've got 2 for you right here to help you out. All right. This is for the roadie in your life. If you need an amazingly portable mic stand, a full size boom stand that collapses down even smaller than a regular stand. If you're looking for Bluetooth foot pedals, if you're looking for tablet holders, look no further than my friends over at airturn.com. Okay, since 2008, AirTurn's been manufacturing wireless products such as Bluetooth pedals and multifunction remotes, supporting hundreds and thousands of customers in over 40 countries. All right, they know what they're doing. I use their stands. I love their stands. Check it out. airturn.com. Use the code ROADIE to save 20% off your entire order. All right. Also, same time, for you bearded roadies out there, or for you ladies that happen to be listening, if you have a man in your life who's got a beard, who likes to keep it looking good, shiny, and healthy, check out my friends over at showprobeardco.com. That's showprobeardco.com. They have created their very own unique formula of beard balm that not only performs well in terms of health and nourishment, but also provides the control, shine, and pleasant aroma that any bearded professional would appreciate. I can attest to this. My beard got way out of control, and if I didn't put this stuff in it, it would be totally nuts. But as soon as I put some Show Pro Beard Co. in there, man, I could tame it right down. It looked good. My mom was into it. My wife was into it. I could be taken out in public and shown off. You know what I'm saying? So try some of that stuff out. It's non-waxy. It's all natural. It's going to leave your beard soft, smooth, and nourished. So use the code ROADIE over there as well. Get yourself 20% off. I want you to tune in next week because not only is next week's guest amazing, I'll be teasing that at the end of this episode, but next week I will be announcing a brand new sponsor that I am super psyched to be bringing on the show. I'm not going to tell you who it is now because we're still ironing out a couple of details. All right, just a couple little details, but they're cool, man. They're super cool. I think you're going to dig them. I'm very, very honored and flattered that they've decided to come on board, and it's going to be a good partnership. We're going to do good things. We're going to do very, very good things. So stay tuned next week, and you get to hear that. All right, let's get to today's guest. Today's guest, Ace Piva, 2010 Road Manager of the Year, named so by the Hamilton Music Awards. Ace here was a drummer, tour manager, is a tour manager, a sound engineer, and most recently the founder of the nonprofit Over the Bridge, which works to increase the awareness of addiction recovery and mental health education, training, peer-to-peer, and professional support resources to the North American music industry. Overthebridge.org. They're awesome, man. You got to check it out. Overthebridge.org. This time of year can be tough, folks. All right. And if you know someone who is on the road, who suffers from addiction, or who's in recovery, or is coming off the road, has a little bit of, tough time coming off the road, or needs help, anything like that, do not hesitate to reach out to them and try to get them some assistance. All right. We got to look out for each other. We got to take care of each other. We got to love each other and make sure the wheels keep turning in the right direction. All right. So check out overthebridge.org. Ace has been doing some amazing stuff. I also want to give a shout out to Richard Bennett of Load In International Magazine. You know Richard, he's been a guest on the show. His magazine, digital magazine, Load In, is a great resource as well. They cover a lot of great people. Richard called me and said, listen, man, I think you got to have Ace on the show. So I did. We had a great chat, and I want to get to it right now. So thank you, Richard, for that. And you guys, we're getting closer to Christmas, man. Stay tuned for next week's guest. Stick around to the end of this episode so you can hear who it's going to be. But get ready to kick out the jams, if you know what I'm saying. All right? I love you guys. Have a fantastic week. All right, here we go. Mr. Ace Piva.
Hit it. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie. Call yourself a roadie.
You know, it's funny that we're doing this at this time of year because last year around this time, I had a woman on, Sue Anello, who's a homeopathic doctor, specialist.
Right.
And the focus of that at that time of year, just like this, was how to take better care of yourself out on the road when you're home, how to deal with sort of post-tour, depression,
Right.
things like that. And so I'm glad that we're circling back now again to have the same type of conversation, although probably a bit more intense in your case.
Yeah.
So it's good, man. So before we jump into Over the Bridge and what you do there, let's cover a little bit about you and how you got into this crazy business and all that good stuff. So you're currently in Ontario, I take it?
Yeah, about 45 minutes outside Toronto in a city called Hamilton.
Yep.
So it's a growing city. It's fantastic. We got great waterfront properties. It's definitely been growing. The real estate market is booming, and it's a great time to live here because as Toronto's becoming more overpriced, all the musicians and all the creative types are moving to the city and making it even better than what it was before. So
cool.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Born and raised there?
Born and raised down in the North End. It's definitely had its challenges growing up. There's some of the tough neighborhoods growing up. If you weren't from the North End, people were often "Don't come down here." And I was okay with that. so especially as the house, as this area became popular, becoming more popular over the last couple of years. We still have a little bit of that old stigma, which I'm okay with because it keeps all the yuppies out. So Good.
So tell me a little bit about growing up in Hamilton and your family and how you kind of wound your way into the music thing. When was it that you got bitten by this bug?
Oh, it was at an early age. Growing up, my dad played a little bit of guitar, never really in a band or anything like that, but playing Rolling Stones and stuff like that around the house. Any weekend party, weekend situation, my parents would be playing anything from Madonna and early Michael Jackson to Talking Heads, some Bob Marley and just a lot of the English beat,
yep.
a little bit of Ramones. So between my parents, there was a nice, different styles of music always coming in. When I was 9, they bought me a drum kit for Christmas, and it was no looking back.
Yeah,
a nice little red sparkle Stewart kit.
Nice.
So
just on a whim, they're like, "Hey, let's give the kid some drums." Or had you?
Yeah, give me something to do.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It's sort of inspired by my neighbor. He was in like an 80s sort of glam rock band called Rox, ROXX, which sort of plays the part.
Yep.
He had the Chris Cornell sort of long curly hair. He was a goalie in a local hockey league. So when I see him, I wanted to become goalie. So I played hockey for 10 years. Got to the point where I was talking to a couple NHL teams.
Well, that's playing hockey. You're Canadian. It's like breathing. It's like water.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Right, peanut butter and jelly. Right. There's no way around. That had to happen. Music thing, questionable. Hockey, yes.
Hockey, yeah. So, I played hockey up until it got to the point where I had to choose between playing hockey or focusing on music.
Wow. So did you stick with the drums at that point? Like that was it?
Yeah. I played drums for about 20 years, from 9 until 29-ish.
Wow.
And I still dabble and play, and I'm getting back into it a little bit because, you need a hobby and some fun.
Yeah.
At least for myself.
Sure.
And then, this neighbor guy, his name was Bo Anger, which is the best rock star name.
That's fantastic. Bo Anger?
Bo Anger. And
man.
And it was his real name. And so, I'd be peeking out, it'd be summertime. I had, my room was in the attic, and I had my Guns N' Roses flag as my curtains. And I'd be hearing all this ruckus at about 1 a.m. And I'd peek my head out, and it's him next door coming home from his gigs with a bunch of girls that they had above ground pool. So I'm seeing girls get their tops thrown off at 1 a.m. And I'm just like, this is rock and roll. This,
right.
My 9-year-old predestined brain thinking, this is what it's.
This is great.
This is awesome.
They're going to love my red sparkly drum kit.
Yeah.
Wait till I bust that out.
Yeah. And then when I was about 10 or 11, he brought me to one of his band practices, and he was late. Of course, I was there before he was because he's the singer.
Yeah.
And
how much older was he?
He was about 10, 11 years old. So he's about 19, 20, just at that.
He was 19, 20 when you were about 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So he's like an old man.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm looking at him like, the girls around. He plays in a great band. My dad would go check his band out once in a while and be like, oh, it's a packed room. And I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. Like, I can't wait to go. And then they played a version of Radar Love.
Uh-huh.
And when they played that, my mind exploded. I didn't know if it was original or cover or what, but and he was doing every cheesy 80s move, like throwing the mic stand down but catching it with his foot and slowly bringing it up. And, because it's called Radar Love, it's something about sex. So he's stroking the mic stand like it's a guy part. And then my mind keeps flashing back to these girls in his backyard at 1 o'clock in the morning. So it's like my brain just is, overstimulated at this point. And I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then, as I got into high school, I started jamming with anybody and everybody I could. And then once I got a band together, we're like, oh, okay, we want to play shows. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I get shows? So there's a local magazine called View Magazine that has all the local listings and all that. So, and they have all the addresses. So, we would tape our practices, put the tape cassette player in the middle of the room, push record at the same time, and then dub that a few times. And
sure, I've been there.
That was our demo. So, then I'd go to the dollar store, buy all these tapes, and then just do copies.
Yeah.
And I'd look in the back of this magazine, and I didn't know what venues were playing what, if they're, originals or country or, different music genre or bars. I didn't know, but I knew bands were playing.
Sure. Did you guys did you get a lot of, other touring bands coming through there?
Yeah, but at that age, that wasn't really, we were getting touring bands coming through, but that was further than where my brain was at the time.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. That was a little more advanced.
Yeah.
Right.
So I actually found my first band bio and the spelling mistakes in it. Where I wish my parents took a look at it. It was horrendous.
It's funny, right? That could go one of two ways. Either, that's really rock and roll.
Yeah.
Right. To just fucking leave all the mistakes in there. Or you just, you just don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah, it wasn't rock and roll. It wasn't cool spelling mistakes. So I'd go out on a Saturday afternoon and just hit up every venue that I seen in the back, with my printed off, maybe have a header, and then just like, here's my band. And they're like, this is a country band. I'm like, well, my first band, we were similar to like Alice in Chains, meets Rancid, meets like very very punk influence, but I had a little bit of grungy because it was kind of that time.
Yeah.
And we played a bunch of house parties, and then that band disbanded because my singer died, which is But I'll circle around back to this later. And then as I was playing in all these other bands, I just became that dude that was like, oh, if you book Ace, if you have Ace as your drummer,
he'll get your shows.
He'll get your shows, and he has a minivan, right?
Oh God!
Yeah, so I was the minivan guy,
right?
So once we sort of not outgrew the local scene, but wanted to expand, there's a magazine up here in Canada called Exclaim, which is very similar to the View magazine, but just on a more national scale. So it's like tour listings of across country.
Wow.
Right.
Yep.
So then I'd be like, oh, this band played at the same club I did in my local town, so we must be able to play similar rooms across Canada.
Sure.
So I would look up these numbers. The internet was just starting to become a thing, but there was no MP3s or anything like that.
Yep.
So I'm still sending out these demos and everything else. And eventually we booked a cross Canada tour and, touring in my minivan and doing all that fun stuff. And, and then, as my 20s came, mid 20s, everyone's starting to find their role in life, whether, job at a TV station or carpenter or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just like, well, I don't want to do anything else.
Mm-hmm. I got the van.
Yeah. I have the van. And
now, wait, you mentioned about hockey and looking at a couple of NHL teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you give that up? Did you sort of not make the cut and you're like, well, I'll do the music thing, or like, how did that play out?
Well, I was a hockey goaltender, around Ontario. I was winning like player of the province award, even though I was a goalie. I'm winning goalie and player.
Wow.
And so I'm having all these eyes on me. But I was talking to the Florida Panthers and the New York Islanders scouts for a while, and we had a couple dinner, meetings and things like that. And the next step was for me to go to the OHL, which is Ontario Hockey League, which is about 2 steps down from the NHL.
Yeah.
I was going. The plan was for me to move up to Barrie, which is only about 2.5 hours from Hamilton, and be bulleted with some family or whatever. And all I wanted to do was bring my drums.
Right.
And I'm like, can I put in the arena? Can I do this? I asked, like, what's the music scene like up in Barrie? And then they actually went and looked, and they're like, yeah, it's not very good.
Wow.
So, and it's still to today, it's a small city, and but there's not that much. Everyone goes to Toronto for that.
Right.
So it just sort of got to the point, and my band was like starting to play shows in Toronto and do a little bit more stuff, and in my brain at the time, like, well, if we're from Hamilton, we're playing Toronto now, we're bound to be playing arenas in about the next year and a half.
Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. We sold out the local club. How can we not
exactly
fill this arena of 20,000 people?
That's right.
And plus, music's not asking me to make the decision,
right?
So to give up anything,
right?
So that's why I went around that route.
Okay. Was that a thing? I don't know how big your family is, what your folks did. Was that a tough decision? Were they like, kid, you're a rising star and you're giving it up for rock and roll?
My dad was like a little like, give your head a shake. This is your chance.
Yeah, and this is a national religion for you guys.
Yeah. So my dad and my parents have always been very supportive in hockey. Because I played on a little bit of a traveling team. So like, their hockey parent life is it's a religion, man.
Yeah.
So I thank my parents very much for giving me those opportunities. but we definitely doing the hockey thing. It learned me how to respect working with a team. How to respect your passion, how to work towards your passion.
Yep.
I had the same coach for a number of years, and he was fantastic. And we had a couple of years where we're playing 78 games or 80 games, and we're only losing 2 or 3.
Wow.
Maybe 4 out of tournaments and all that.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where because Wayne Gretzky's from around this area and his dad's a big supporter of the minor league system, Walter Gretzky's his name, he would always come out to these tournaments, and whoever's in the finals, he'd go give the 2 final teams like little pep talks.
Wow.
Right? But because we were always in the finals, he was always like, "Ace, boys, I'll see you on the other side. You guys will win, and I'll see you at the next tournament because you'll be in those finals too."
Right.
So we were just a hot team for a few years, and
that's awesome.
Yeah. So got to play shinny with like Pat Falloon and Dave Andrewchuk and all that stuff. Because they're all kind of from this area. So growing up, Hamilton's fantastic.
Very cool. So, but you passed that on and went for a life on the road.
Yeah. Like my bands at the time were playing these local and national shows, and then we're even going down into Michigan a little bit, and trying to break into the States. And
was that exciting? Crossing the border?
Oh man! Oh yeah! It was scary times. Our vans. My van got ripped apart a few times, and they're always looking for something. And but we made it through, and did a bunch of shows in Detroit and Flint and Kalamazoo, and
nice.
And we're sleeping on people's couches, or when we're in Canada, we'd be sleeping on beaches or somebody's front lawn, or in the van. We weren't affording hotels or anything like that. So just grinding it out that way.
Yeah.
But once my band sort of, they're like, this is fun for a hobby. I wasn't ready to make it a hobby.
Right.
So once again, that View magazine in the back, there was a little ad, just a little tiny one, just said, "Want to work in the music industry? Come give us a call." And I was like, "Man, what do I got to lose?"
Sure.
So I gave this number a call. It was to a company called Key Music Group.
Okay.
And so they had set up a 10-week course on how to be a tour manager. Right.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. So Key Music Group at the time, weirdly enough, they had an office here and one in London, UK, and they managed the Pixies and the Spice Girls when they're a 4-piece.
Wow.
Yeah. Blew my mind. I had no idea this was happening down the street from me.
Sure.
So I ended up at the top of my class. It turned out that I knew about 70% of the stuff they were teaching me because of my experience, but I didn't know it was worth anything.
Right.
It's like, how to wrangle a band like, a herd of cats and dogs, and, how to put a schedule together. I'm like, I know all this. I know this stuff. They helped me figure out how to budget a tour and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they had an artist named Jim Noir from the UK, and they're like, okay, we got a tour for you. I was like, what? Like, that wasn't part of the schooling or anything like that. But
I was going to say, is that what their deal was? Like, you go through their program and then they funnel you off? How much did this thing cost, by the way? Do you remember?
I think it was $5,000.
Wow. For how long?
10 weeks.
10 weeks?
10 weeks, yeah.
Okay. So, that's a good investment for a 25 or whatever year old kid.
Yeah, my mom lent me the money, and
wow.
it took me a few years, but I paid her back. And so went to this thing, and like the idea for this course was to get people working music, but it wasn't necessarily meaning it was a tour, because but they had faith in me, and so my first tour manager role without any drumming having to be in the band as well or anything like that. I was with this Jim Noir guy, and we went down and did South by Southwest, and then we flew to LA, did the Viper Room, and then did a couple shows in New York and Philly and all that.
How big was this band?
Small clubs.
Okay.
At the time, they had a song that was on a Nike commercial that was being played during the World Cup.
Okay.
Right. So they were making some bank off of that, and that was sort of like their mainstream sort of moment to see if they could capture that, the lightning in the bottle sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was great. South by Southwest is always a wild time, trying to get your backline sorted. If people are getting it delivered other places, and there's a few instances there where I remember we had a radio interview, and right next door was the English Beat. And growing up, I was like, oh, the English Beat, me in the bathroom. This is great. And we're looking and going, I got a message saying that our backline had been delivered, but when we arrived, it wasn't there. So, and then I overhear someone talk and saying, oh, they brought us the wrong amp. Where's my keyboard stand? Where's this? And, oh, I didn't need this. So it's like they had things they didn't need and things. And then I'm like, oh, what do you have? And it turns out they had accidentally stole our backline.
Yeah.
Right. So here's me going, oh, English Beat, I love you. You're my huge influence on me growing up, but I need my stuff back.
Yeah, give me my shit back.
Yeah, me in the bathroom, but I need this, right? And then the backline company forgot to drop off a bass drum. Right, I was like, shit. So after me getting this bass drum back, or sorry, all our backline minus the bass drum. English Beat's like, where's our stuff? I'm like, I don't know. You got to talk to your tour manager. Where's he? He's like, he's gone for lunch. I'm like, no, you need to give him a call. Sorry, love you. Gotta go.
Gotta run.
Yeah. So, this was my first couple days of being my first official tour manager gig, and I'm just like, I gotta solve this kick drum issue.
Yeah.
So we ended up finding one of those 5-gallon water jugs.
Yeah.
Water bottles, right? And so we stuffed a jacket in there, and I straddled this thing, and I held the kick pedal on, and it sounded like a pretty good bass drum situation. So, but
look at that.
We needed to make it work. We had a good chuckle about it.
Yeah,
it didn't sound too bad, and I got to straddle this 5-gallon water bottle for about 25 minutes, and while this guy's kicking it with his kick pedal, and so once we finished that run, we came back, and my mentor / teacher, Dan Brooks, there was just like, how was it? I'm like, it was the greatest. A group of guys, although it was tricky at times.
Sure.
They respected me because when you tour manage your own band and all that, you're just one of the boys, and you tell them to go right and they go left.
Yeah.
So it was a fantastic feeling, and then that started it off, and then just got a whole bunch of the recommendations started coming in. All big part of this industry is networking, so I made that a priority to learn how to network properly and get out there and be brave even when you're not so sure about a situation.
Yep.
Early, this sounds kind of funny, but a friend gave me a book called The Game. The Game is a pickup book, how to pick up chicks.
Right.
The author was Neil Strauss, and he was a writer for Rolling Stone, and he went on tour with Motley Crue for a year and didn't get laid. So he's all like, well, how can I be on tour for a year with Motley Crue and not get laid? So we end up writing this. He ended up doing research, becoming part of this whole pickup community. So I read this thing, but the only thing that was different for me was instead of picking up chicks, my goal was to pick up phone numbers and do business with people.
That's classic.
Right? So
that's hysterical.
Yeah, but the same things techniques work.
Yep.
You know, when you're walking up to someone that you may be intimidated, whether it's a beautiful lady or, you know, someone in the music industry, you know, you see their name in programs, you see a little bio, you do a little research, and you're like, oh, this guy's the president of this label, or this guy's, oh my goodness, you know, your heart's going.
Right.
But the same techniques apply.
Uh-huh.
So I'd go there and pick them up, you know, get their phone number and do follow-ups. And, you know, if you're trying to use these techniques in a romance situation, instead of getting laid, I'm doing business deals.
Right.
So you know, it worked for me.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
That is wild, man. Was it hard for you to make the transition of not being in the band and pursuing that part of the dream? Or at that point, you didn't care because it was like, the dream is to be involved in music somehow. And I'm doing that. And I'm doing it pretty well.
Yeah. You know, I really found my niche.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, you know, I've gone to a couple psychics over the years. You know, when I'm in high school, my mom's friend was a psychic, and, you know, you kind of take that stuff tongue in cheek a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know, let's say between the ages of 15 and 27, 28, I might have seen 3 or 4, and weirdly enough, they all said the same thing. But, you know, in different people, different stages of my life, which was, you're not going to be the rock star that you want to, but you're going to play a very significant part in the music industry behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So, you know, as you know, when I was in my band, I got the feeling like, okay, this isn't going to be the rock star band that I was hoping for. But, you know, I was booking shows, and I was like, well, maybe I'm going to become a booking agent, you know, and then the tour management stuff. I'm like, well, maybe the tour management stuff, this is what is going to take it to.
Yeah.
And I've had a few dreams that I've been able to live. You know, you have these dreams and these pictures of these situations, and I've been able to live a few of them.
That's
where
awesome.
In one of them being, you know, at South by Southwest with that first band, we were at some private party on some rooftop. And did you ever watch Entourage?
Oh yeah.
So, like, I had my Vinny Chase moment, right? Like, where I'm standing on top of the building going, shit, I had no idea where life was going to take me, but I'm going to take a minute and appreciate this.
Yep.
So, and I was like, wow, this is my first tour doing this, and I'm already living this moment.
That's great.
And then years later, it was like having just a special moment with my parents beside me, because I'm very close with my family.
Yep.
So I was on tour with this band called Monster Truck, and we were opening up for Alice in Chains, and we got to have that moment in our home city, sold out home arena. You know, I got to bring my parents backstage, meet one of the guys from Chains. My dad enjoys the Chains and stuff like that. So it was just one of those moments where the family, although my parents always believed in me, there was always like, what if? What if it doesn't work?
Oh, yeah.
My dad was always like, hey, Ace, you learn how to weld. Go get a trade. Go. And I'm like, nope. That means I have a backup plan, a safety net. And if I have a safety net, I may not give it my all.
Yep.
But so there was that moment, you know, side stage, Alice in Chains, you know, I'm doing this stuff with Monster Truck. And my dad just comes up and was like, you know what? Proud of you, kid.
Oh,
you know,
that does it right there.
Right there. You're just like, bam, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right there. You're like, fuck Vinny Chase.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? I got my own moment now.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just a very proud moment. And then being able to just walk home from a gig like that, it was sort of like a movie-esque ending.
Yeah, you floated home, dude.
Yeah, just like, you know, although I've done bigger shows elsewhere.
Sure.
It was just like my friends and family don't often have a chance to peek into this world.
Yep.
And for them to be able to have that peek in our hometown.
Yeah.
The audience is going crazy and people are chanting and they know you had something to do with that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. So it was just one of those moments, and I live about maybe 7 or 8 blocks from there, so I just got to, like you said, float home and just be like, man, this just happened. It
That's awesome.
just gave me the time to really appreciate it, be grateful for it,
Yeah.
and really burn it into my memory. And then maybe if I had gotten a drive home or had someone walk in with me, I wouldn't have had that time to really let it sink in. So, yeah.
That's very cool, man. All right. So wait, now real quick, you've obviously done a lot of tour managing, road managing, all that stuff. In fact, 2010 Road Manager of the Year.
That's right.
Right? Hamilton Music Awards. Congrats.
Thank you.
But it also says you've done a lot of sound engineering, but not specifically front of house or monitors. So tell me, let's hit a little bit of that.
Well, at the same time,
is it just a byproduct of being around it and like, hey, the guy didn't show, go turn some knobs?
Well, I had a few friends who were sound engineers, but then around the same time they were starting to get gigs as sound engineers, tour managers. And I was like, well, you're not a tour manager. How'd you get this? He's like, well, they could only afford one person out on the road. Mm-hmm. And so, the manager helped me learn how to, guided me through this. I'm like, oh, fuck. All right. So then I just started volunteering at a couple local clubs. I bugged the sound guys to teach me, and they're telling me to go fuck off. And, it's like, no, I don't want to teach you because you're going to take my job. I'm like, nope. So, I look up, once again, go back to the View magazine, see what time doors are open. I'd show up 2 hours, an hour and a half before. Wow. And the guy's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, you're teaching me how to do sound. And eventually they're just like, fine. Like after weeks of me just showing up and, being a nuisance, they're like, fine, at least you'll stop just looking at me weird. Right.
Right.
Right. So, start off at learning how to wrap cables and things like that. And just to try to put myself in a better position to get more tours.
Sure.
I was working with a young metal band at the time called Threat Signal, who's was signed to Nuclear Blast, and I was their tour manager. And I was like, okay, I've been learning how to be a sound guy for 5 months now. They're like, how are you? I'm like, I'm getting there. So,
but my price is right.
yeah. But I know how you want to sound.
Right.
Because we've spent that time in the van. It's like, guitar heavy and all that. So, I started being like, hey, my first thing whenever I go into a club, and still to this day, is I know how the band wants to sound. You know this room better than I do. Let's work together and make it sound great. Each room has their perks. Some frequencies are hotter than others. So, even after doing sound for over 10 years or whatever, I still take that approach because, I've only spent half hour, 40 minutes in this venue. And when you're not working with larger bands, you're doing load-ins at 5 o'clock, 2 hours before doors. So I don't necessarily have time to sit there and EQ the entire room.
Sure.
I just need to get them on, get a solid mix. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, and this band was like, if you feel comfortable, we'd love to have you there. So, they took a risk on me. I started in, small, sometimes bingo halls, and I was like, this is small. I feel comfortable. Yeah. But it turns out bigger the venue, easier it is because there's more control to the room and you got better equipment. So, as I'm on the road with these guys for longer and longer times, I just started taking more chances. And then digital boards started popping up all over the place. And so I'm learning from different house guys in different towns. And, and then my approach was like, hey, I've never worked on this board, but I know what the band needs to sound like, and you know how this works. So let's work together. And 9 out of 10 times the people were very helpful and nice. The once in a while you get the guys being like, I didn't come here to teach them, dude. Right. Which is fair enough. And if they helped me out, I'd throw them a few bucks, even though I was making
nothing.
I was making nothing, but it was the experience. And that's, that's how it rolled out, and it's
Wow.
So, I just needed to improve my skills, so I did.
Good for you, man. Good for you. So, all right, let's get to Over the Bridge and what that is. Let's give the people here a little overview of Over the Bridge.
Yeah, so Over the Bridge is a nonprofit organization that I started in August of 2017. And what our main mission is that we connect people, or we connect members of the music industry to addictions and mental health, education, training, and support resources.
Why? Why you?
Well, 5 or 6 years ago, well, before that, growing up, there were substances around.
Mm-hmm.
My parents weren't heavy users, but their friends were, not to throw my dad under the bus, although he wasn't using, he was supplying. And by the time I was 4, I had the RCMP, which is the Canadian version of like the FBI or the Drug Enforcement, bust into my house twice to take my dad out. But my dad was smart, never brought the stuff home. So, our house got rampaged a few times by the RCMP.
Wow.
I remember the second time when I was about 4, just being put up in my room, and there's a male and female cop in the house getting pretty wrecked up, right? And then growing up, learning about drugs, my mom got my dad to get out of that, got a lot more straight and narrow. That turned into factory work, and then eventually working for heating and air conditioning. Okay. So if you met the man now, you never think his past was such. But
wow.
So when I was 10, 11, my dad wanted to teach me about how drugs affect people. So he would take me down to the local homeless shelters and introduce me to old clients of his, and be like, "Hey, it's summertime, it's blistering hot. Hey, Bob, come over here. I noticed you're wearing a long sleeve shirt. What's going on? Here's $10. Tell my son your story." And the guy has infected track marks up and down his arm. And this guy, what seemed to me at the time was out of his mind, and not knowing why. He's like, I've been an opiate user, heroin junkie for the last 5 years, and he showed me all these infections up on his arms, and I was like, oh, and then this go to the next guy. It's like, oh, I see that big red nose. That's all messed up. It looks purple, and the guys have veins coming out of it. Let's go talk to Billy. All right, so we go talk to Billy, and explain to me that he's an alcoholic and all that stuff, and and just met the crackheads, the meth heads, and everything else, and that was my early drug education.
Wow. Was it meant to scare you or what?
I don't know if it was meant to scare me, but it was there to educate me and to allow me to make my own decisions.
Yeah.
And instead of making the decisions and finding out what happens later, he showed me what the results of these substances use are. And, my parents have always been great in order for me to make my own decisions, teach me how to do that, but as well as make decisions with an educated mind of the whole situation. So
as you got into music and you got playing and you got into your teens and stuff like that, you started drinking, smoking, whatever, you dabbled? You're a teenager.
Teenager. I dabbled a little bit, but in my bands, I was always, they called me the mom, right? Although I'm a guy, I was always like, oh, you're drunk, get in the van. I was always that guy.
Right. So it stuck with you. It wasn't the feeling of like, I'm going to party my face off and that thing isn't going to happen to me.
Right. But, I still dabbled, and I learned. And when I drink, I have a hangover for 3 days and I can't afford 3 days off. As one of my main bands growing up, a big thing that really stuck with me, and it was disappointing, but I get a life learned lesson, was that guy Bo. We were playing at a local bar, like we had a monthly residency sort of deal, and Bo was hanging out there. at this point, he had a work accident. He got addicted to opiate pain meds, and he got into dealing coke and all this stuff. And one thing that was very impactful for me was because growing up, he was a mentor.
Sure.
He was for him, I wouldn't be on this path. And he was trying to sell some stuff to my bandmates. I had asked him, I'm like, hey, like, I don't, if this is how you make your money, that's fine, but I'd appreciate if you don't sell the stuff to my bandmates. And he looked at me dead in the eye and goes, don't you ever tell me how to make my fucking money. Right. And it broke my heart because I knew that wasn't him. A couple of years later, his best friend OD'd and died, scared him straight. And then he got in another car accident. And while he was kind of laid up, the doctors gave him some more opiate pain meds, and he thought he could do one more line, and he ended up ODing and dying because this was probably 5 or 6 years ago at this point. But so there's a lot of time in between. But there's a lot of time in between. I didn't talk to him either because I wasn't there to tell him how to make his money.
Right.
So it was sad to see it, someone that I looked up to, someone that I mentored, go down that way. But it was definitely a learning experience.
Sure.
Yeah. So, so all that happened. But then one time I was on tour with a hip hop artist. He actually wrote a few albums about his recovery. He's in recovery. I was just tour manager doing sound, trying to keep things on the up and up. He had got himself in a financial situation with some gangster where we had to wear bulletproof vests for a few days because we're being told we're going to get killed and shot. We had to bring the Hells Angels up as our extra security for a couple days. And, during this time, he had relapsed after what he says 3 years of sobriety. Some old party friends came on, and the tour was went down the drain really quick.
Mm-hmm.
When he was sober, he made it clear to us that he wanted to keep busy in order to keep his mind occupied, and so he wouldn't be triggered. At this time, I wasn't fully understanding of it, but anyways, his PR person just filled him up with interviews. But now that, so that was before he had relapsed, and now he's relapsed, and now he's not doing any of the interviews he was fighting to do previously. We were in Red Deer, Canada, and we were supposed to do an interview with CBC, which is massive up here. If you get a CBC interview, you're doing good. It's a cross country radio station, and he just kept hanging up. So then I get a call back, and I'm just like, oh, sorry, it's bad reception, but it's fine for me. But when I hand my phone over, oops, that mystery bad reception.
Yeah.
And then he yells at me going, Ace, I don't do interviews before 3:00. And I'm like, dude, it's 5:45. And you're still in bed, get your shit together. So although the interview would have taken 6-7 minutes, we spent 45 minutes arguing.
Right.
And so I got pissed off and I left the bus. And just as I was frustrated, trying to calm down for a second, a fan had approached me. He came to the show early, and he wanted to thank the artist for saving his life. I go, tell me more about this. Turns out he was an addict of a number of years. He had overdosed 3 times, died twice, and his wife was with him, and she was crying, just saying, I've been through it all with him. And he went to rehab and detox, AA, NA. He did all the treatments that he could think of and that was available. However, none of it spoke to him, in a way that was able to stick. However, the albums that this artist had put out about his recovery had inspired him. And at this point, this guy was 10 months clean and sober. And it really, it made me feel something wonderful to to really notice the power of the lyrics and the influence that artists have on their fan base. However, because of our current situation, I couldn't meet the introduction because I didn't know if this was going to be a trigger and this guy was going to, maybe relapse and die himself. So I just said, sorry, he's not available right now. But it broke my heart. I wish I'd been able to have been better prepared to help the artist through this difficult time, to keep him on the right track, because of the influence, the positive influences that he's had, at least on this one kid.
Yeah.
And and you always hear, if all this work can make difference to one person, it's all worth it. Well, this was the one person, and it was great that he had found sobriety and all that, but you could tell he just wanted to look up to the person that had saved his life.
Sure.
And thank him.
Yeah.
And it was such a heartbreaking moment. So that tour was 6 weeks, and it was the worst tour of my life. And for a number of other reasons, the party just kept getting heavier and heavier. There was no trust. There was no, I'm doing things to save him money. And then when I go, oh, hey, look, I saved you an extra $200 doing this or that. And the guy's turning and it's like, oh, you're trying to steal from me. He's accusing me of stealing. I'm like, if I was stealing, why would I be giving you this money? I would have just pocketed it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Why would I be like, here? It's like, well, I don't know if you got more. And I'm like, well, you had no idea about this money.
Right. Did you tell him about this chance meeting with this fan?
Yeah, and he didn't
respond.
He didn't respond at all, and it was very disappointing. But even after he relapsed, he was still going up on stage saying, I've been sober for 3 years. It's been the best time of my life. This song's about this, live strong and all this, like talking the talk, but his walk, he wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
So just seeing him continually like put out this message saying something that he's not, I was just like, you lying son of a bitch.
Right.
I brought up the issue with management. Management really didn't. They're like, as long as he gets to the next show, we don't care. And that was a big moment for me as well. I'm like, well, why don't you care? Like, this guy's your money maker. What if he goes missing? What if he dies? Like, back on luck. It's like, he's been doing this long enough. He knows what he's doing. But the way he was running his business, there was, he was ripping a lot of people off because he wanted every piece of money. You go to a show and you get your buyouts. He's keeping all the buyouts, and none of the crew's getting anything because it's his money and he's already paying you.
Wow.
Right. So it was just a dog shit of a tour.
Yeah.
But then I flew right from that one into a pop tour, and that was just it was a welcome change.
Yeah.
Different environment. But that experience, I almost stopped touring because it broke me so hard.
Wow.
And then I didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted to do something to help. And then about a year after that, I was working with Monster Truck, and we were playing with Alice in Chains. And at this point, they've had William DeVille as their singer for a couple of years, and they're a clean and sober band, and everyone's been in recovery for a number of years at this point. And their tour manager at the time was in recovery as well, and he was an AA sponsor. So I'd be sitting in this office, and one of the band members or one of the crew guys come in and go, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And you kind of get the idea of kind of what's going on, right? And once I learned that he was a AA sponsor, I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Right. Not only are you able to help, someone, be a tour manager and do all the, run a tour that size, but to be able to be there for emotional support. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So that was a big inspiration, because I was already looking to find my footing.
Yeah.
So although, I've never had substance abuse issues or anything like that, growing up in the household that I did, I understand the addict mentality, because, with my dad sort of doing his stuff, we're getting drop-bys all the time. And
Yeah.
so, I understood that. So when I came home, I enrolled into McMaster University for addictions counseling program. So for the first while, I was on the road. I was doing part of it online, and then when I was home, I was going into class and all that, just to learn, how to become an addictions counselor, learn about motivational interviewing, which is a technique to use while counseling, and all that. And then during the same time, in between tours, I was volunteering at homeless shelters and different recovery programs, which eventually led me to gaining my first job outside the music industry in about 10 years.
Yeah.
So, from Monday to Thursday, I was either volunteering or working as a counselor for a program through Mission Services. I don't know. Do you guys have Mission Services down there?
I don't know.
No. Okay. So Mission Service is very similar to Salvation Army.
Okay.
They have homeless shelters.
Yeah.
They do a lot of programs like that. They have women's shelters. So, it's very similar to this mission service place. So I became a group counselor, from Monday to Wednesday or Thursday, and then I was on the road from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was able to balance things out, but I needed to get that life experience.
Sure.
So I worked there. I was there for a total of 2 years between volunteering and employment, and then really seeing the impact that group has on people. People who've shared the lived experience, people, not just lived experience, but having others in the room that just generally want to help. It was, every group was incredible. Even the bad groups were great.
Yep.
It was bad because someone was having a freak out, but that is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
It's often a learning curve, because if you're going through addiction, a lot of scientists and studies say that addiction comes from a place of trauma. It is a way of coping with trauma. So when people get upset, it's because they're looking inwards, and they may not always be proud of some of the things they've done, or they're discovering something new about themselves. So it's often breakthrough moments. So then my goal was always to take that experience and bring it back into music.
Yeah. So
then, once again, I start networking, letting people know about my new path and things like that. And, over the last couple of years, I've worked with a number of clients who are in recovery. So, so I've been working with them as an addictions recovery coach, as well as tour manager and front of house and all that stuff. But
how do you balance that responsibility, particularly when you're working, right? When you've got your tour manager, when you got your roadie hat on,
right,
and you get a call, let's say, or something from a client on another tour.
Yep.
You got to be there for that person, but you got to be there for your artist as well.
Yeah. It is a tricky balance. Whenever I go on tour with someone, whether they're in recovery or not, they understand this other responsibility that I take. If I'm in the middle of a show, and I'm doing sound, I can't pick up a phone.
Yeah.
But if I'm not the front of house engineer on that gig, I'm usually just standing at the side of the stage anyway, so I could step out for a quick minute, and as long as I get my settlements done, that's fine.
Yeah.
If I'm in a hotel, if I'm sharing a hotel room, I'll take a walk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
But generally when I'm on the road and I'm working with someone in recovery, you know, they're my boss. They're the person I'm there for.
Yeah.
So, you know, if a promoter's calling me, I'll get back to them when I have a minute, because,
Yeah.
you know, when you're if you've been on the road and that was your party life, there's a lot of trigger moments, people, places, things, you know, so you know, when they come to me for that help, you know, I close all doors, you know, I mute all phones, and my attention is fully on them, because especially if it's an artist, if the artist isn't in a healthy place, it's not going to put on a good show.
Sure.
So, and often it doesn't take a lot of time. We're not sitting there doing a 2-hour session.
Right.
We're shooting the shit for 10, 20 minutes, sometimes a half hour. You know, being that ear, asking questions, seeing what's important to them in their life. Depending on the artist, you know, there's certain rules and things that need to be followed. Maybe no alcohol backstage, things like that. But when playing this role, it all comes down to having a trust and relationship with I hate calling artists clients.
Right.
Because at that point, they're more than a client.
Yeah.
You know, they become friends, they become allies.
Yeah.
And we're on the same team. So,
how do you like, you know, because I could see it could also slip into like that babysitting role. So how do you not feel like a babysitter?
Well, that's tour manager.
That's tour manager.
You know, that's being a tour manager. That's not being a recovery coach or a friend. Oftentimes when
because there's a lot of lines there that you're playing within, right? If your artist is also a client, or also your boss, quote unquote, and you know, even if they're just having a bad day. Right. And the night before you had some amazing breakthrough with them as your client, but then the next day they're just being a dick as an artist, you know, as a tour manager.
I call them out.
What's that?
I call them out.
You call them out. Yeah. Yeah.
If they're, I don't care if you're a client or if you're some dude walking down the street. If you're being a dick, I'm going to call you out.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked with, some managers that have a bigger rock star ego than their artist does. It's like, oh, you know who I represent? I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't work with rock stars. I work with people. And, you know, and before we're a musician, before we're a parent or anything, we are people. So if people come at me with some rock star bullshit, I tell them to put that back in a box and you know, talk to me when they're ready to talk to me like a human being, because I ain't nobody's patsy. I ain't nobody's, you know, like I'm here to be a sounding board and a friend. I'm not here to be yelled at because you feel like being an asshole that day.
Right.
You know, you can stick that attitude up your ass, and whether you're in recovery or not, that doesn't matter and doesn't give you any right to treat me like an asshole. So,
right.
You know, get out of my office and come back to me after 10 breaths, and you could talk to me as Ace. And yeah, so yeah.
So you're a year and a half, almost 2 years in to Over the Bridge.
Right. Yeah.
Really small business time now. Right.
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's actually going really, really good. You know, we started. I started Over the Bridge as a Facebook support group for people in the music industry. Just because off of me running these groups and seeing the support that people get, you know, I was like, well, you know, this you know, peer support really helps. So you know, when I'm coming up with the idea and the concept, I thought it was just going to be this online support group for each other, and it grew really, really fast. So it's open for people in the music industry. There's you know, we have a little screening section there to make sure that you're in the industry and you're not there trying to be a fanboy or anything like that. So,
do you have other like counselors and stuff now working with you that you train?
Yeah. So I try to make sure that I'm the lowest educated person.
Yeah.
In that, so at least I know what I'm armed with as far as knowledge. But so when I bring people on, I bring, we have a few counselors and a few therapists in the group as well to oversee crisis moments and to help us put together some educational material and things like that. So yeah, we're just under 1,300 members right now in that group.
Wow.
So yeah, I started it on August 7th of 2017. Mm-hmm. By the 14th, someone had suggested, "Oh, this would be a great nonprofit," and I go, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." And what a rabbit hole this has led me down. Yeah. And by August 21st, we were a registered nonprofit.
Wow.
So it happened really quick, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like, how do you run a nonprofit?" I had my background is roadie.
Yeah.
So how do I do this? So once we got that status, it's just sort of been everything's been happening fairly quickly. But I also started over the bridge work before we were over the bridge, although I didn't know they would combine or whatever. About 2.5 years ago at this point, when I was, was still in my very time of like, I need to learn everything, right? I'd finished school, but my brain was still hungry for knowledge. I read an article about post-tour blues, it was called. It was an article about post-tour blues. And I go, oh, this is an interesting article. So I reach out to the author who wrote this thing, and the guy's from Utah, and he's the family therapist. And from my understandings, he had interviewed a few local musicians, a few friends, but he didn't have any hard evidence about, post-tour depression. So I go, oh, so I'm like, that's interesting. So he did an article with no facts, but everything is anecdotal. So I do research online about post-tour depression, post-show depression, and there's a few people who talk about it in their blogs, a few articles about it, but there's no science behind it. So luckily for me, a neighbor of mine, a couple doors down, he works at McMaster University, and he's a student counselor, and he runs his own therapy business. So I was like, hey, you work at McMaster, right? He goes, yeah. I'm like, I found this article, but there's no facts, and I've done some research. There's research about post shows and post game for athletes, the anxiety and stress that go into, putting on a high energy performance. But there's nothing on the post side. He goes, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. I was like, what do you think of a study? Right? And he's like, yeah, sounds like a good, and then I didn't see him for a couple of weeks, and I bumped into him. He's like, so what's been going on? I'm like, I don't know. It's just still percolating in my brain, right? Yeah. I don't know where to go with this. And he's like, well, this is who you need to talk to. So I'd talk to him about once a week, once every couple of weeks, and he'd just send me off on these little tasks. And so I was like a little gopher, just going out, getting it all done, and talk to this person over at McMaster, over at the ethics board, and to make sure everything's done right. I had an option at one point of doing it by myself, where just be an online survey sort of deal. Yeah. But it wouldn't hold any real weight to it at the end of it. Right. I could get through it quicker. I could ask any questions I want. There's nobody sort of guiding the approach. But it was very important for me that we got some validation out of this. Sure. Right, and because I had taken part of my courses online, I was the first person from this particular extended education program that they had to even want to do a study.
Okay.
So they had to look into it if I was even allowed. So they're like, well, it doesn't say that you can, but it doesn't say you can't either. So I'm like, oh, I'll take that gray area.
Yeah.
So I just sort of went out, bugged a whole bunch of people, and then with each challenge, when we're looking for the questions that we're going to ask in the study, I end up talking to different researchers from all over the world. And what the study does is measure the musician's post-performance mood response. So when someone goes up on stage, you got dopamine levels in our brains that go through the roof.
Yeah.
It's a natural high, that musicians, I'm sure, that have felt like Incredible Hulk after the show.
Right.
They've played well and they've connected with the crowd, and everybody is just losing their minds. Like, what a great show.
Yep.
Right. And then there's instances under that where you felt like you played a good show, maybe even your best, but there's no connection with the crowd. Maybe you're a musician in a wedding band and the event's not about you.
Right.
About the bride and groom, or maybe you're that flamenco guitar player in the back of a restaurant, practicing your scales, and you did a great job, but no one really gives a shit.
Right.
Right. So, but at least you could be proud of what you did that day.
Yep.
Right. And then there's the shows where people love you, but you feel like you sucked.
Yep.
Or how many times have you gone up to a musician and be like, oh, that was a great show, and they're like, the monitors weren't so good, I was a little pitchy here, I messed up that one roll, and it's just can't. There's always excuses, right?
Yeah.
So, and then of course there's the shows where they play like crap and everybody knows it.
Right.
Right. So, but funny enough, the serotonin levels are still the same, but you're just feeling it on different. Are you feeling really good? Or are you feeling really bad?
Yeah.
The serotonin and dopamine levels, they also affect your sex drive, but also how scared you are.
Right.
So it's like both happy and sad and scared. It affects all those, the intensity of it. So the study measures how you feel, but also how you manage those feelings. So if you're feeling extremely well, do you feel like isolating yourself? Do you feel like being social? Do you even deny that show was as good as it was?
Right.
Right. Do you use substances? Do you go for a run? Do you feel like you need to watch a movie? Do you feel social? Do you feel like you need to hide in the closet? Right. So, and then the same results for those who feel they've had a low response. So, we've been working on the study now 2.5 years, and we're able to get complete data from 411 people. And in the next couple of weeks, we are supposed to be finding out our results.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's an exciting time. And just because that study was all based on mental health and feelings and how we manage those, it just sort of correlates or matches up perfectly with what Over the Bridge is already working on. So
That's cool.
So once we get this data back, we'll be able to show our industry, hey, this is what we tend to be doing when we're feeling high, when we're feeling low. And I'm not saying I have any answers and solutions to this, but at least we can recognize it.
Right.
Before we come up with a solution, we need to recognize how these feelings and these managing tactics.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm really excited after 2.5 years that we're finally coming to an end on this.
That's tremendous, man. Well, that's a great way to start 2019 in this next chapter, right? I also noticed on the site there's something you've put in place here where venues and promoters and whatnot can reach out to you or to Over the Bridge or to get some support at each show. Talk a little bit about that.
Are you talking about Safer Stage program?
Yes.
Oh, the Safer Stage program. So that's something that it's out there, and we are not actively going out to do this because we're just waiting for a little bit more time, I guess, for me.
Yeah.
But if anybody comes up to me and says I need these resources, I'll be more than happy to put something together for people.
Okay.
But the idea behind our Safer Stage program is to put customized and localized support help in places where venue staff and touring musicians and musicians can find them. So if someone's looking for mental health crisis support, whether it's a phone number or a local facility, will have those available, as well as some recovery help. So we'll put phone numbers of local AA meetings or the website for that's available to get that information. So the idea is, put in green rooms, on the back of, if it's a small club and you don't have a green room, let's put it on the back of the speaker. So when you're up on stage,
right,
you can see this.
Yeah.
Put it in the staff room, put it in the sound booth, to show that, there's help locally for us. If you're a touring musician and, going through these constant up and downs, plus, you don't know if you're going to eat or how much money you're bringing in, for a musician and for a lot of people in the industry, you don't know exactly how much you're going to make this week. Some months you do really good, some months you don't do so well. And so those bring on extra stresses. And, if you're an artist who's trying to make it in the club scene, you get frustrated. Let's say you have a couple good shows and a couple not so good shows, attendance wise, you start, self-doubt and all that. And so we figure if we could put these resources in places that, our people will be, then we're showing our artists and our staff that we care, about each other. It also helps, break that stigma. Oftentimes, our industry doesn't like the fluorescent lights of a doctor's office, or it's easy to ignore, or people say, I don't know what's available out here, so I just won't look. So if we put, these resources right there, then it's there.
Right.
I'm not saying people are going to use it every day, but it's a chance it could save, someone's life.
Yep.
A situation like, Chris Cornell. I hate using him as an example because he's used a lot, and people, I don't like to talk about people that are overly talked about too much, but he's a prime example. Maybe if there was something in his dressing room saying, hey, if you're looking for help, here's this number. Maybe I'm not saying he would have,
right,
but maybe.
Maybe, right. At least the opportunity would be there.
Right. In our tour books,
right.
The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, along with local ones. But, when you're TM and you're running tour, there's a lot of details, that is a detail that you can take off the tour manager's hands. And all you have to do is once.
Right.
You post it up. It's there.
Right.
Don't be a dick and put a show poster over it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Things like that. And at every venue. And so if someone like Chris or someone else, has an issue, doesn't know who to talk about it or want to talk about it, but wants to talk about it anonymously, there's these numbers and there's these resources there.
Yep.
But often when you're in a moment of crisis, you're in a moment of manic, so you're not thinking straight. You're not going to go up in your phone and look what's going on. You need something that's right there.
Right.
So you have these numbers on in the bus. You put it on your day sheets, or you stick it up with some tack, and you put it there.
Right.
And
anywhere where it can be found.
Yeah. And it helps more than just the musicians and the crew, like the stage crew. Bus drivers. man, those guys have the craziest schedules.
Crazy schedules. I don't know
Yeah.
how they do it, man.
Yeah, you know, and they're off. I've seen a lot of, you know, tours being, you know, the crew and bands, they get this hotel, but the driver will get a motel,
Right.
because it's closer. You know, they're human too. You
Yeah.
know, I understand we want to shave a few bucks, but you know, a driver on the tour, if you got a driver's not paying attention, everyone's dead.
Right.
And we've seen that happen more,
Yeah.
you know, a few times over the years.
Yeah.
You know, so who, you know, maybe things aren't going so well at home. I have a friend who's a driver and just reached 500,000 miles. He just got his a little medallion for 500,000 miles, and it's like, how much time are you not home?
Right.
How much, you know? I know his wife very well, and she sees him not very often.
Right.
You know, she meets up with him when he can, but there's a family behind that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the mental stress, you know, if you're dealing with an issue, the road's a great place to hide from it. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm busy. Oh, I'm sleeping. I'm doing this.
Right.
Right. It's a great excuse not to handle real world stuff.
Sure.
But if you don't know who to talk to or where to turn, then you could be up shit creek, man.
Yeah.
But
Right.
once again, if we have these resources here, maybe, just maybe, people will use them.
Yep. Where do
So-
you see over the bridge in the next, 5-10 years? What are your hopes?
Well, right now we're focused on.
Right now, we just want to finish this report.
Yeah, well, we're doing that right now. We're finishing up putting together our first official board of directors, and the candidates who showed interest, I'm very, very excited about.
Cool.
You know, we'll make that announcement when the time's right and all that. But when we're able to, you know, I've had sort of like a dream team in mind, and it's kind of working out. So
Good for you, man. Good.
So, you know, I look forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah.
But first, we're going to focus on the Canadian market when it comes to doing some projects. But of course, there's, you know, things like our online support. And, you know, if people want this localized, safer stage information, I'm never going to deny anybody anything.
Sure.
So I don't care where you are. I'll figure this out for you.
Yeah.
No. So, but eventually, our idea is to have multiple physical locations, centers, where we could do music industry support groups, one-on-ones, educational nights, training evenings, you know, where we have some counselors and therapists. You know, we'll do songwriting therapy sessions, things like that. We also want to have, our goal is to have our own 1-800 industry specific with 1-800 number. I know there's a few out there that are used for the general public, but you know, I want it to be for people, ran by people. You know, when you pick up the other line, the other person, you know, they're going to be a counselor or therapist or, you know, a crisis worker, but someone who's had that experience of being on the road, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not a lifetime of experience,
Right.
but
They know the world.
yeah, they've gone out there. They've been able to do a couple weeks out there. And I think that might be one of our mandates for people to say, okay, you know, I'm paying for you to go on this tour, and your job is to do merch on this run.
Yeah.
Right. And you get to see the lifestyle that it breeds, you know, eating out of gas stations,
Yep.
you know, and people go, oh, why can't you just go to a Walmart? Because, you know, a Walmart is not right there.
Right.
And, you know, usually when people go into Walmart, it's a 45-minute thing.
Right.
You know, we have 7 minutes. Go take your number twos.
Yeah.
Because done that on the bus.
Yeah.
And go grab your stuff, because we got to be in Omaha in 8 hours, and we only have 7 hours to do it.
Right.
So get your shit together. Let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, Yeah. So we want to have a couple physical centers across Canada, and then eventually into the States as well as put together a bunch of educational programming, which that could happen earlier. And we want to be able to financially assist people with their recovery journey as well as therapy and counseling. So,
Nice.
but as financing comes in, every day is a new little hurdle.
Sure.
But each little hurdle brings us that much closer to those long-term goals. So
That's awesome, man. That's
yeah.
awesome. Ace, man, you've had quite a run, dude.
It's been a good one.
And it really sounds like, you're a lucky guy in that, you found your first passion, music
Yep.
and touring, and then you found this other path for yourself as well, and you're able to combine the two. That's super cool.
Yeah. I've been very, very fortunate, to have these ideas pop into my head.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky to have the people around us. And, we look forward to, doing training and educating people consistently. We have a program that we work with a pharmacy on about a naloxone training. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, naloxone is a drug that you give someone during an overdose, an opiate overdose, mm-hmm. that reverses it and saves someone's life. Mm-hmm. So we've been going around venues in Southern Ontario, doing training for venue staff, because if something happens at our shows, in our clubs, in our venues, we're the first responders.
Yep.
Bartenders, security, door people, sound guys, touring people. We're front line. So if we can arm as many people as we can,
Yep.
and these people are out at 100 to 300 shows, events a year.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense to arm these people with these life-saving drugs and know-how.
Yeah.
So we've done a few in the Toronto area, Hamilton area. We've been able to since over the summer we did training for close to 100 people on the Warped Tour crew. Nice. that came through. So they put us up in their catering area. They treated us very well. Kevin Lyman, cares about his people very, very much. So we had training there all day. So whenever anybody had a minute, because we understand that, being on that tour schedule is bonkers and you're just go.
Going. Yeah.
Right. So we made ourselves available for any time anybody had a minute. It takes 15 minutes to go through the training session, mm-hmm. And then followed by a question and answer session. So, and everybody left with 2 kits, which is both a nasal spray and an injectable. Some people like the idea of nasal spray because you don't have to work with a needle.
Yep.
But depending on a number of factors, maybe the person has a cold, maybe they're a cocaine user and their nose is all messed up from it. You spray it up and maybe not as, all of it will go in, right? Where the needle is straight in, right into the muscle. You don't have to look for a vein. So you either do it in the fatty part of the arm, mm-hmm. 3 fingers down from the top little bone up there, or in the side of the leg. And the great thing about naloxone, also known as Narcan, mm-hmm. Is if someone's down and it's not an opiate overdose, it doesn't hurt them.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic drug. Last month, we were contacted by crew from Fleetwood Mac. So when Fleetwood Mac was in Toronto, we trained 15 of them. So these people are, once again, they're in touch with thousands of people a night.
Yep.
You never know what's going to happen. So and then plus with the history of the members of the band,
yeah,
I'm sure they're all clean and sober these days, but back in the day, they have their history.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So just in case anybody relapses, anything, we got a life-saving tools out on the road.
That's great, man.
So if any tours are coming through the Toronto area, please get in touch with us, because we'd be more than happy to come down and supply free kits and free training. It doesn't take long. We don't ask much to do this. If there's any way we could get some spare tickets that we could raffle off to help, support our training ventures and education ventures and all that, that would be that'd be fantastic. But that's not mandatory.
Yeah.
What's important to us is that these kits are out there, and that people are being saved. We've been working with Marchese Healthcare based out of Hamilton for the past year on this project, and they've been fantastic. Their lead hand, Faisal, he's a great trainer. He's very educated, very smart. We're very lucky to be working with them and on this project. So
cool.
Yeah.
What's the best way to find you?
Overthebridge.org, or you could email me at ace@overthebridge.org. So that's ACE. So pretty easy.
And you're on all social media outlets there too, yeah?
Yeah. It's either Over the Bridge Nonprofit. Okay. You could generally find us. We do have a business page, so please come and like it. Follow us. We have motivational posts. We post about the good, bad, and the ugly in our business page. To educate and show that we care for our industry and our community members. Because without the people who work in our industry, this wouldn't be an industry at all. Right. Being the industry we are very, very lucky to be in a place where we could positively affect millions of people, with a proper song lyric or a tweet or a message using social media. Our artists have the power to save, lives all over the place just by their words.
Nice.
We got artists like Macklemore out there who are talking about his recovery and even fails. He's had lots of clean time, but he has a song about a time where he slipped up, and people are coming up to him and thanking him for his recovery. But it's a new day.
Yeah.
And with artists like that, it gives not just our industry some hope, but it gives our fans some hope. It gives people someone to relate to about the struggles of mental health and recovery. And if someone has a few extra bucks and is able to donate to Over the Bridge, if we can influence the influencers, we could influence a very, very large population.
Yeah.
So, and it all comes down to that full circle of that original fan coming up to me and really showing me how much influence an artist has on someone's life. I knew it growing up, listening to my favorite bands, but they never influenced me in a way that saved my life quite like that.
Sure.
And, so although we're helping our industry, help the general public.
Yep.
And, that's our ultimate goal. So, but before we can help everybody, we got to focus on the people who are the influencers, who can make a large difference. So that's our big goal. Influence the influencers, and together we could help the world, sort of deal. So
I love it, dude. I love it. Ace, man, thank you very much for taking the time to stop by here at Roadie Free Radio and share your story. Very cool. You're doing some good stuff, man.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank my co-founder, Cole Smith, for putting up with me and helping me put all this stuff together. She's more behind the scenes and doesn't like her name mentioned too much. But you know what? Without her, I wouldn't, Over the Bridge wouldn't be where it is. And, the future is looking bright. So
good. Well, you know what they say, behind every great man is a greater woman.
Ain't that the truth?
Ace, you be well. If you come through New England, let me know, man.
Will do. It's been a minute, but you never know what that tour schedule is going to look like. So
That's right.
Thank you very much for having me.
You bet, buddy. Ace, my man, keep up the great work. I really appreciate what you're doing, and we all appreciate what you're doing out there with Over the Bridge. You rock, dude. Okay, folks, here we go. Next week, episode 115, our Christmas Eve episode is with Mr. Leo Beatty, roadie for the MC5 and Iggy and the Stooges, and many, many more. This was a great chat. I want you to stick around for it. We're also going to be announcing our new sponsorship partner, so stick around for that as well. In the meantime, guys, you can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify, all as Roadie Free Radio. Check out the website, roadiefreeradio.com. Send me a note because you know I want to hear from you. That's info@roadiefreeradio.com. And guys, in the meantime, you all be safe out there. No roadies, no rock and roll.